It's 5:31, so I'm going to go ahead and call our Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is to review and approve the finance minutes for March 10th. Is there a motion on those?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bartz and second by Ms. Davis. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the first item is to review and take action on some step adjustments for some street division employees. Stacy did provide not only the memo, but also the relevant section of the handbook. And it looks like she's asking for those adjustments to be retroactive to March 19th for the 4 employees listed there. Does anyone have questions for Stacy or motion? Ms. Davis?
I have a question. What is the possibility for these items to be bundled together when we have an employee who's getting a promotion, that we also bring these items?
She tried. She tried. I don't know if it was my fault or Steven's fault. One of us didn't respond to her fast enough. So she tried.
Okay.
I'll answer that for you because you're probably going to answer it not as bluntly. Or was it you? Was it you, Stevens? Or was it me? It was all 3 of us.
That's okay.
So there you
It
go.
was the intent.
Yep,
and it didn't
she
happen.
tried.
Okay.
I-
So, as a follow-up, I don't know if anyone has institutional knowledge on this rule. It seems like a collective bargaining type of union approach. Does anybody know? Has it been in there forever? First of all, I guess there's 2 parts to it, the 5% or 8% when you get a promotion. And then the second part would be, I think it's called incumbents.
Mhm.
And is the incumbent in the same job, the identical job? Is that what I couldn't find a definition of incumbent.
Yes, I mean, because within that class or grade of pay, all of those employees in that grade are expected to do the same work. They don't always do the same work every day. So like I typically have 1 or 2 people that run the street sweeper, 1 or 2 that do signs. The
Do they-
rest usually do the catch basin, storm sewer repairs. So, but they're all supposed to know the same work.
Do they have the same title, job title?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can tell you, we're doing a pay study now, as you know. And Lisa and Mark and I just finished a meeting with our consultant, and this did come up, the same concept of identifying folks that are what years in position, I think is what they call it, rather than incumbent pay. But it was recognizing their years in the position to make sure that if they bring someone in, that there is a policy for kind of readjusting. That's the steps of the others that may get leapfrogged, was the phrase she used.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Or a motion? So it'd be a motion to approve or not approve the 4 employees retroactive to March 19th.
Also move.
All right, motion by Mr. Moldenhauer. Is there a second by Mr. Bartz? Any other comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, very good. Thanks, Stacy.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is to review and take action on the approval of purchase of radios for the police department. Chief Brower is online. And Chief, I didn't directly tell you this, but you wrote a very good memo. I know that you aren't always so sure about these. They were very complete, which I appreciate, and those in the room agreed. So it's not just me telling you that you did a good job, but.
Thank you, ma'am.
So because he wrote such a nice memo, I'm happy to have him provide a summary, but I'm guessing we're just all pumped that he got such a great deal. I know Mark was.
Yeah.
So,
I'll make a motion to approve. That's exciting that you're gonna be able to get this all under the cost that you got it for. So that's great. Awesome. Motion to approve the purchase of radios for the police department.
great, motion by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Bartz. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Easiest meeting you've ever been to, Chief. Please
Thank you.
continue
Thank you
enjoying
very
your
much.
vacation day. He's like, I'm on vacation today. Well, maybe come just for a second. All right, our next item is to review and take action on modifying the employee handbook for sections related to our group health insurance changes. I did mention to whomever was listening to me at the beginning, we do need to table this item. Internally, we just need one more review. So, Ms. Davis.
So a motion to postpone this modification into a future finance committee meeting
Thank you,
date.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Motion by Davis, second
Second.
by Moldenhauer. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Our next then is to review and take action on the out-of-state travel policy. This is kind of a funny one, but Chief Rainin very politely reminded me that I already tried to change this policy, and apparently I didn't carry the ball all the way forward to the council. And so rather than just approving a policy or sending a policy to the Common Council that was passed by Finance Committee a few years ago, we're just bringing it back to you all. There's nothing different than what was originally proposed. The only change we do need to make is to the title of the resolution. It just has the wrong heading on it, but Lisa, as long as you change that heading before it goes over to the council agenda, we should be good. Are there any questions? All right. If not, I would just look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve this?
All right, motion by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Bartz. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, very good. All right, next is to review and take action on a parking lot agreement for the UPS, for UPS. So UPS has been using some city-owned land, frankly, since Mayor David's era. And the Airport Commission has asked us to reevaluate that lease. This version went before them. That's why it's now before all of you. I have shared this with the facility manager at UPS. I kind of discussed the concept with him during a business visit and then sent this to him. I haven't heard back from him on this version, but nonetheless, I did inform him that it would be before all of you tonight for consideration. So just looking for motion to approve the parking lot agreement or answer any questions y'all may have.
Is it an increase in the amount?
It is, I believe it's either $100 or $150. Looks like Mark knows,
I think it's 275
Oh.
currently.
but it is an increase.
Okay.
And are there any other changes from the previous agreement?
No.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. Any other questions? All right. Is there a motion then? Yes, sir.
Approve the UPS parking lot agreement as described or as written in our packet?
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Bart, second by Mr. Moldenhauer. Any last discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Very good. Our next is to review and take action on a confidentiality agreement with Jefferson County. Oh. Alder Lampy is indeed not here. Questions on this item? Yes.
Just a quick question. This is specific to judges, Jefferson County judges?
That's how, I don't want to answer that with intense confidence because I know as much as you do. I read what you read. So my read was judges and their families and their personal identifiable information.
Okay, but there's no other agreement that we have with any other elected officials in Jefferson County, is that correct? This is just specific to judges?
I can't say if we have another agreement. I'm unaware of another agreement about data for elected or appointed officials. I know that this Act 235, from what I know, pertains strictly to judges. What I do think we need to be mindful of, or what we'll have to confirm, and I can make sure Stephen confirms, is I don't believe we have any judges that currently reside in the city of Watertown at the county, like a county judge. But if we did, we probably would need to redact their information from our GIS. Would be the thing. So like if one of those circuit court judges lived here, we would need to make that adjustment. But I don't believe they do.
Right.
If I am unfortunately at the limits of my intellect on this one, and Stephen is out of the office today. If you all have more questions, do you know more about it? Okay. If you all have more questions, we can definitely table it to the next meeting, or if you're comfortable, this would be an agreement that would have to go to Common Council anyway. So if you're comfortable passing it out of here to get it to council, then he'd be present. I'd be open to that. Yes, sir.
Well, generally speaking, judges are exempt from having that information released, I believe.
I believe that's what this Act 235 does. So I think you're correct. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna make a motion to approve this confidentiality agreement with Jefferson County.
All right, thank you. Motion by Davis. Is there a second? Second by Moldenhauer. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Very good. Our next is to review and take action recommending the resolution to close TID 4. That is separate from our TID project expense. So This one is just the TID foreclosure. Mark, you want to add anything?
We've talked about this in the past, and I gave you a draft that looked like somebody else's because it was from the state. So this is in our format. But we had never officially approved it as a finance committee. And so that's what today's request is, so that it could go to council and then to the state before the April 15 deadline.
Any questions for Mark? Or a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, sir. Motion by Mr. Bartz, second by
Second.
Ms. Davis. Any last questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Very good. Our next item is to review and take action allocating the TID 4 city increment to various projects. And I'm just looking at this. Stinkers, we are doing facilities tonight, not next meeting. I had my information backwards.
Yeah.
Apologies. Good thing I read this. I really did last week. That's why I apparently pushed it off in my own mind. Okay, so last meeting, we presented you all with options to consider for TID foreclosure. Tonight, we're looking for your recommendations on how to allocate those funds. I'm careful on allocation as the verb instead of spend, because certainly some of these numbers are going to ebb and flow. Ma'am,
So Mr. Lampy, I think, asked for a breakdown of the Main Street reconstruction expenses. Oh, thank you.
ask and you shall receive.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You.
We are required to have all kinds of numbers to the state for this state municipal financial agreement that I've given you an excerpt of. The first page is just to show you that what the title is, but on the back page, you can see the details that are listing who's getting to pay for what. And in the middle of the sheet, extra municipal items has a listing that starts with second conduit down to benches. And that's the subtotal of the 907,200.
What are block identifiers?
Go ahead.
It would be to indicate that this is the 100 block, the 200 block, the 300 block for addresses.
What do they look at? Like,
Yeah. Do you have that on the website, Mason? Do you know? On the task force? Let me see here. Oops. Reference resources? This 400 right here
Yeah.
is a block identifier.
why are you laughing at me?
So, oops, mine just went out. Let me see if there's any.
Yeah.
The actual images. Yep, that's where I'm trying to get us to. So here's again, these are just examples provided by Vanderwall and iLevel Studio. So this is there's more examples of the arches, which I can go to in a moment, but this is they call it the palette. So this is the overall vision of what we'd be purchasing. These are just renderings. Obviously, design is, still as an option. The only thing that we've committed to at this point are the light poles. And those, Andrew reminds me often, those are expensive lights. Right, Andrew? $1.4 million, something along those lines. And I don't think this is the exact version. Or, no, this is the version, isn't it? I thought there was one more lower one, but I think we got rid of that. It's still there. So these are the arch examples. And then there's pylon examples. that would go at the east end of the downtown. Here we are. This gives you the lighting example.
It's listed on the sheet at 1.6 million for the lights.
They needed those early. The kiosk goes essentially right outside of the movie theater in a bump out there. Here's some of the block identifiers by, these colors are the brand colors. That's where they're pulling those from. Those are the brand accent colors. Bike rack options, directional signage. And then the parking signs, which I think are my favorite. I love those. So those are some examples. The furniture and benches and planters should look familiar. We stuck with the same ones since those were still in good condition. But the palette kind of gives you a good overview. So I'll hop back to that just to keep that on the screen for folks.
And the second conduit is. It's for
The
65,000.
second conduit, yep, go ahead.
So the conduit will be for fiber optic. The state's putting one in on one side of the road, but this would be for both sides of the road. So if we needed to tap one for service, we wouldn't be cutting across the road or boring across it.
Mhm.
So if I may, I thought out loud today with myself and a couple of people that just happened to be within my shouting distance or had the guts to walk into my office while I was in thinking mode. And so I ran some initial ideas and numbers past them. So where I started was, we have this 891,000 that's left, and I'm using that intentionally because Rock River infrastructure shouldn't be ignored. We have this TID closure money, and TIDs by nature are designed to develop your community, economic development, business development, community development, whatever you want to call it. So I was trying to keep that in mind. And so what I did is I looked at the items that literally had, as elementary as it sounds, the most indicators of jiving with our comprehensive plan recommendations. So I looked at that, and then I looked at a mix of economic development, business development, community development, parks and infrastructure. And those things are intentional because they are, we're just talking about brand colors. They are really important, recreation anyway, to who we are as a community, and infrastructure is the number one thing I think all of us here. So I tried to kind of play a mix of those. And then it was plugging and playing basic elementary math, addition and subtraction. Marion Clark Street for me was number one and number two, quite literally, because it hit 4 out of our 5 community develop or our comprehensive plan desires. So I started there, which then just had me subtracting. I don't see another way that we fund traffic barriers, and so I put that third on my list. Those traffic barriers can be used throughout the community. You will. It's fair to say that I'm a person who really tries to think about the safety of the way we operate as a community and just learning from history. Stacy's sitting in this room, the amount of times we put and pull out barricades and the impact that has on our crews. These have gotten more expensive. These were 90,000 when we opened the square, and now they're 125. So I think that's something I would really, really like to see us fund. I think the sign program has big bang for the buck. It's $25,000 allocation with, we kicked around concepts, and the concept that it sounds like was kicked around with Mason and the redevelopment authority was potentially 50% up to $1,000. So that takes the sign grant program that we've seen in the downtown and expand it across the city. So really to allow businesses access to a limited amount of capital, but maybe something that would perhaps allow them to improve their signs. For me, this was desirable because it's business development, but then you also see a lot of signs that are just like tarps lately. And so I think this would just allow us to have a nicer business aesthetic in some of those locations. And then so I went, Marion Clark, the traffic barriers, the sign program, that left me with 350-ish left. And so then I went to Wilbur Street and I cut that in half because we did apply for a 50% grant, which would drop that to 100,000. And Andrew is a very good budgeter, but I do believe we'll have some ability to to flex some of those end of year dollars, to make up that other 100,000 if we didn't get the grant. And then honestly, I went to parks because, man, I've cut the Washington Park concession stand and restroom probably 7 times, but it's $500,000. And I couldn't figure out how to make that work with the math I was doing. And so I went to the diamond renovation with the hope that we could cost share that with the entities that use it. So allocating the full amount with the desire to potentially go to the other institutions that utilize that. I really struggled not allocating anything from the Main Street list. It was uncomfortable for me not to do so, so I went back and forth on $100,000 worth of seawall money or $100,000 worth of some of these extra items. And for me, we're going to have some expenses for the Main Street reconstruction. Sure, we could grab $100,000 worth of them here, and it would make a difference. I just don't know that we've flushed out enough publicly yet what these should be. And so I put my last 100,000 with seawalls, because infrastructure is important. We've only recently, in my last 5 years maybe, started doing seawall work more consistently versus just when it was failing. And that has been effective. Andrew and his team have done a good job of inspecting and then repairing. But admittedly, this would potentially accelerate us by 2.5 or 3 cycles. So I'm not saying that to sway you. I'm just saying it as a jumping off point, that's where I landed. And that allowed me a mix of economic development, business development, parks, community development, and infrastructure. So, yes, ma'am.
That's very helpful, and I think I was leaning toward quite a few of those. Talk to me more about the diamond renovation.
Yeah. So we get a lot of complaints about the quality of, and Christine, it's hard because everyone's on spring break this week, so that's where everyone is. But Christine, even before Christine's time, we get a lot of complaints about the quality of literally the surface of the diamond. So to my knowledge, what we've been able to do is essentially push back the infield and reseat it. You'll see, if you drive by there, you'll see us attempting to do that. And if either of you in this room know more about this, feel free to come to the microphone. But what it is the condition of the field is essentially, and I'm sure it's not original, but I can tell you it feels original to my lifetime. And this field is used by Watertown Unified School District. It's used by the college, and it's obviously used by us for a lot of our activities. So let me see if anyone is remote now that I'm thinking about this. But
That's helpful.
there's
And
a lot more. I don't know if Christine, are you there? No, it's just me practicing being the random number. Hunting you all. Just kidding.
so it'll be just will it be new ground cover? It'll be taking out and putting back in?
I think it could be a few options. There is, it could just be seeing what we see now. So right now, the infield is predominantly grass. The mound is chronically reworked. The outfield is chronically pushed back. If she, gets allocated dollars and these clubs say, you know what, put in a turf field and we'll kick in 100,000. I'm making these numbers up.
Right.
It could change. That's why I want to be careful in how I answer your
Understand.
question.
And then one more question. The Mary Clark Street, the new proposed possible development, is that the impetus for this? For connection 1, connection 2?
I think the impetus is the project, yes. But I think our willingness to commit dollars to it is knowing that if we want that site to develop at all, it's going to need this infrastructure. And Pete is the number on the line, so Pete could speak to the utility extensions in more depth. I know in my own kind of simple mind about this, the 177,000 allows us connection on one side of that parcel. The 216 allows it to be looped. And again, I'm about to hit the limits of my intellect, but I know that looping, I've heard Pete talk about it several times, is really important to water pressure and water quality, so that you essentially aren't dead ending a pipe. But if Pete or Andrew want to share more, obviously you guys would know more than I would. I'm going to see if I can get Christine just on an off chance, or maybe Pete can't unmute himself. Let me see here. And I can't unmute you either, Pete. which is very weird. Andrew, is there
Can you hear me
anything?
now?
Oh, yes, yes, we can.
Okay, I had to press *6.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so yes, if you want me to give a quick spiel, if Andrew hasn't filled you in with the utility needs there, I can.
Do you guys want more info on that? It looks like we're okay, Pete.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. I'll put it back on mute then, thanks.
Other thoughts, questions?
I have a question. So I added the portable traffic barriers also on one of my priorities. But I wanted to ask, are those similar to the ones that they've talked about for use with Town Square
Mhm.
at that intersection?
The meridian barriers,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And they were, I believe, 90,000 at one point. Was that, or am I wrong? Okay. Okay.
Okay, thanks. And then the other thing I had the Main Street reconstruction
Yeah.
non-eligible on my list just because of the number's so big that,
And I can get on board with that. I waffled.
yeah,
I waffled back and forth.
okay.
I can't see if your hands up. Go with yes.
That downtown reconstruction, working in the construction industry, there's always something that's gonna come forward you're gonna miss. And having extra money available is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I would rather have a surplus someplace ready to use, because you're gonna miss something somewhere along the way. And you're gonna have that money available at that time when you need it.
That does bring up a good question about what's the procedures process.
Yeah, so we don't, I mean, to my knowledge, we don't have to allocate all of it or even any of it. I mean, it could sit. The only other time in my tenure that we closed a TID was when we closed the Walmart TID and Mayor Davids suggested putting it for the creation of the town square. And so we did. That's where it went, to that redevelopment project. But, yeah,
So can any of these things be done in this year, this construction year?
I don't know about Marion Clark or Wilbur. I think you said Wilbur probably could. You go to a mic.
We're working through design on Wilbur. There isn't design currently, but there is a chance that gets completed this year for a fall construction.
And there is a chance we would get the grant. There is a chance that you would have enough funds left from this year's borrowing, potentially. It depends.
Yeah.
So to the point, yes. I mean, what we could do is allocate some of it, or we could create a priority list with with the necessary approvals that we would actually come back to you all. I mean, there are no requirements. What we didn't want to do, though, is close a TID and have the history of it. And to your point, Ms. Davis, this doesn't happen every day. So to be able to have that with you all that have gone through this process, I think is helpful, even if nothing else, setting the stage for the future.
So then, as a committee, why don't we look to see what could be done this year? And allocate the funds towards those items for this year. What are your thoughts on that strategy?
Sounds like a good idea.
So one thing, the portable traffic barriers could
Yes.
probably to be done this year.
Yep.
And the citywide grant program could be done this year.
Mason?
How about the seawall additions for $100,000?
You have some allocated this year? Come on up.
So we cycle through planning, design, and construction. We did construction last year, so we're in the planning and design year for this year, but we could look at projects to see if some kind of rise to the top.
In the seawall area? Okay.
Yep.
Because I think that was 100,000 we were thinking.
The 240 was just a wrap up of the 5-year capital plan. Yeah. And those are just placeholders. There's no magic to that number.
And then you said Wilbur for 100,000?
Do you feel like Wilbur could happen this year? Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's good.
I'm
I-
thinking diamond renovations too late. Or when would they
I
do that?
don't
Fall?
know.
Would that be a fall?
Might be.
I don't know.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that if we get to a position with Marion Clark, and this doesn't have to change your methodology, I think your methodology is sound.
Mhm.
If we get to a position with Marion Clark where we have a development agreement,
Well, then we could.
I've seen a gap. The gap right now is so big, I can't even bring it to you all because there's no math I can do to fix it.
Mhm.
So they're reworking some design elements, like they're chatting through that, but this could come up.
Emily's correct. There's a significant gap and they're already not factoring in paying for those utilities just because if we added that in, that makes the math even more unworkable. So
Okay. Well, then what if we ask for a tier system where, okay, but could be done this year definitively. This absolutely could be done, but this is on the horizon for next year. And then the remaining with the, what are your thoughts?
So go with the, with the four we've discussed already and then tier the other ones based on
Prior?
Yeah.
Priority.
when they could be done.
So what four do you have down? The barriers, the grant program, the Wilbur?
Wilbur Street and the seawall additions, right?
No, this is a planning year, so it would be next year.
Next year.
So that would be in the
Just-
tier two.
So just those three then.
I would think just generally allocating to Marion Clark is gonna be the safest path.
Okay, we can do that.
Don't you think? If the project doesn't work, the money's back on the table.
Okay,
But if we want the project, it doesn't work without this for sure.
okay. I'm fine with that. Are you guys okay with that?
Yes.
So at this point, proceeding with the grant program, the traffic barriers, and the two items for Marion Clark,
And then potentially Wilbur.
potentially
I
Wilbur.
mean, if it can be done this year. Maybe we just allocate Wilbur, 100,000 to Wilbur.
And with the grant, that should take care of that, right?
Yeah, the grant should take care of that, right?
How about this? Why don't we allocate the 100,000 to Wilbur if we don't have existing money to cover it?
Okay,
Because if we get the grant and you can piece together 100,000, we've already borrowed money for that purpose. What do you think, Mark?
I think that, Andrew should be able to come up with 100,000.
I think, so. No, and he thinks so too.
And
We've talked about that. He thinks so too.
100 for both of you.
Yeah. So that's why I was saying it the way that I was. I think it is a good demonstration to say these developments will need these things to make them happen. So I think it is a good demonstration to both projects. But if you have the funds, I'd rather it go that way and use these for something else. Is something else burning on your mind, Mark? Okay, I couldn't tell. So I think what I'm hearing is just establish an initial approval list, I'm gonna say, for the items that could be completed this year. So the citywide sign grant program, the
Barriers.
portable traffic barriers, Marion Clark, and Wilbur with the disclaimer that it should be funded elsewhere, if possible. Elsewhere, that's not a word. In a different way, if possible. Could we bring back, could we give Christine the homework of coming back on Washington
Yes.
Park? I'll let her know that. And then what would you like kind of next step wise? We've made these initial nods, I'll call them, like an initial nod that these are the intended uses of these funds. What's left over, Mark?
And you got 248.
Okay.
That's not giving anything to see all.
Should we have the next round of it be the, besides this caveat for the diamonds at budget time?
Oh,
Would that be a good next time? I haven't thought that through. I'm just throwing that out there.
yeah, I think we kind of were doing that with ARPA funds. When we were periodically
Yeah, we were.
revisiting them.
What do you think?
Yeah, there's no have to spend this money immediately.
You want to gain some interest on it?
There- Right, I will. At the same time, you want to be able to promote a very successful TID.
Yeah.
And it's helpful to have a list of what you're going to use it for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what makes it very successful.
I like that most of these are permanent types of
Mm-hmm.
additions to the city municipality.
And that they align with the comp plan, because there are, 11 pages of capital improvement needs.
Yeah.
So what we did was just
A good
tease
strategy.
out the ones that align with the comprehensive plan. So there's plenty of other one-time things we could spend it on, is my point.
Yeah.
We could spend it on however much your tandems cost these days, right? We could buy a tandem axle and be done. I mean, yes, it stays for a while, but it's over.
Yes.
These, I think, the community impact, I think, really aligns with the original source of the money.
Yes.
That's why we liked
It
this
was a good
approach.
approach. Very good.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, we're going, I think, I'm looking at like Marion Clark, that's gonna come back in another form, either through a contract or, or through, a development agreement. The citywide grant program, I think Mason would draw up the parameters for that and bring that back like as a concept. Wilbur Street would, or excuse me, the traffic barriers are over the limit that we can approve, so those would come back too, is that right? My point being, all these are gonna come back for your formal approval,
Right.
okay?
Sounds good.
All right then, so with that,
Thank you, staff and everybody, for all the work you put into this on the front end and made
Yeah.
it a lot.
we're
More
glad
efficient.
to. It was nice to sit and think together for an hour. I think we should just take a motion to reflect this work, though. Mark, you have the components of what we're voting on written down there.
I've got Mary Clark for 177 plus 216, citywide sign grant for 25, portable traffic barriers 125, and up to 100,000 for Wilbur Street expansion if necessary.
Yes.
Is there a motion then to that effect?
Motion to approve the list that Mr. Stevens just shared.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Davis, second by Bartz. Any last comments? All right, all in favors, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, very good. All right, our next item then is to review and discuss the facility upgrades for City Hall, Public Works Park, Rec Forestry, and Public Health. Mark, you want to tee this one up?
As you recall, a numbers of months ago, we asked for a facilities study. And FEH was the architectural firm that was hired to do that. And they made a presentation to us, but it was at a time where we were really spending our effort on putting together the budget. So the request was get through budget season, start the new year, and then bring this back to us. And so that's what this is kind of taking the report from FEH. And then in the meantime, I've worked through models with Baird, a number of different iterations. We've actually had 8 different iterations. Then the mayor and I have worked together to try to figure out what is it that we should be presenting to you. It's a big chunk of change. It's $20 million if we're going to do it all. And the reality is, I'll be first to admit that what do we have to show for it? The $13 million for City Hall is the same City Hall. So that's a hard sell. Unlike trying to buy a fire station that was all brand new. Here's the same or similar sum of money to create a very much more efficient use of space. And I think that that's what we're gaining, but at a somewhat expensive proposition. With that said, though, when does it ever get fixed? I have a pet peeve or two that I've had carrying over for the last 3 years. Restrooms on the second floor are on that list. And I'm not one that's using it like Mason and Andrew do. and Emily.
Mhm.
But it's pretty disappointing when the second floor is where so many of our visitors come, whether it's for council meetings and or other meetings and or court. And those are the nicest bathrooms that we have on this floor. Somewhat embarrassing that we haven't invested much into this building at all through the years. But then the look is beyond just City Hall when we have then the capability of saying, well, what about the rest of our facilities? So that's what this report is a combination of looking at the facilities and the finances and the affordability on any and all of those things put together. So prior to getting into the nuts and bolts of the report, I want to just take you on a tour.
Can I switch to you?
Yep, please.
I was just looking in the packet for your memo, because I don't have it, but I swear you wrote one.
Mhm.
Do you guys have one?
Yep.
And
Sorry,
the
no.
packet online doesn't have one either. So, very weird.
The
But-
the 18 pages?
Oh, I have that.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh, I thought you wrote something else. Okay.
Thought he did. I'm wrong.
So what I have asked for departments to do is just kind of give us a snapshot of what their facilities are looking like at this point. Not trying to bore you with all kinds of pictures, but just some, if you will, highlights or lowlights. This happens to be the Sally Port for the police department. And it's fully usable, but obviously that's pretty limiting in what they have for current space for on site, in-house or out of the weather areas and all. Chief Brower wished he had grabbed a picture just this last week because the cars were all covered with the snow that we had for one day. And sure enough, in the course of that snowstorm, there was an emergency call where 2 or 3 of his cars had to leave, but they had to wait and shovel snow first. Just for kicks, I took a picture of the first floor and second floor just to kind of be able to envision, why are we even here? Well, because the fire station's leaving. And so we've got empty facilities that are going to just sit there vacant if we do not do anything. Obviously, the big apparatus bay could be used right away for police cars to satisfy what the police department is interested in. But that's kind of the chunk of what the fire department has for space. They really don't have a lot of real estate on the first floor there. And then the second floor, I don't have nice tools like Andrew has in engineering, so I have just 3 different boxes there. So you add them all together and that's all fire department space. And then I've also added what the police department currently has on the second floor, because the design concept that FEH is proposing is to put the police department all on one floor. So that space in its entirety, both red and blue, would disappear off of the second floor utilization and move down to downstairs. Just moving over to Public Works, 72 different units that need to be washed to keep them going as much as possible. And it's a lot because of solid waste that has moved into this building. And so we've got one wash bay that is constantly being used, and we desperately need to have a second wash bay for just the number of the sheer volume of equipment that we have going on. A lunchroom that was probably too small to start with, but it's what was built into the building. And again, we've added additional employees into this space since the building was built. The meeting room used to be a Stein storage room. So they've moved all of the signs out elsewhere, obviously. But this does not allow for the full department to meet even in this meeting room space.
And is this heated and cooled? I think that's an important caveat.
Oh, yeah.
That sign,
What do you need heat for?
Yeah.
It's like,
well, I mean, it looks really nice in that photo and you did do a great job with what you had, but I just want to, I just want to be careful.
assistant manager's office is actually now 2 people that are trying to fit into that space. And then the foremen are sharing a space that was a parts room. And you can kind of still see that, yes, parts are still in that space. And also, we're out of space in Public Works. Moving over to Public Health, just to try to get through all of these pictures. This is the entirety of their waiting room. A whopping 3 people have seats available to them. And you typically obviously have a lot of children that are added to this mix. I can just show you picture after picture of how crowded each of their spaces are. It's storage that's not available to them. So you just store it on the floor and wherever else you can fit the things. Office space could be improved space-wise as well. And then, here's a cubicle that somebody has without having, again, some of the picture got cropped off to the left side. She has a pile of things that are there. In addition, adding things like this is the water that we've added to that space just this last year. Park and Rec, all you have to do is visit their offices and see that they are desperately in need of storage.
Can you go back one? This is, this person works like half the week. Oh, I'm in the upper right corner. I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
She's sitting at a table.
That's at their front counter.
Mhm.
But then what you see, a resident that comes to the counter sees all this stuff that's all over the place because there is nowhere to put it. These are some of their back offices that we don't have storage in this building.
Oh, go back one more. And these were like essentially closets. They're meant as treatment rooms for a foot clinic is how those spaces were used before. So as we've grown the team, they've had to repurpose those spaces. That's why they look so tight. They're closets. Yeah. This was a break room that we turned into the rec programmer, Jared's office, and then storage on the right. I wish they would have taken a picture of their storage where they keep all their seasonal sports supplies. So I always like picture it like the space between the wall and like the next wall. What do you call those? Like almost like a plumbing chase in a building is kind of what it looks like. And that's just filled with like bats and gloves and balls and helmets and anyway. I wanted to have one other caveat on the fire station apparatus bay. It is true the squads could be moved in from not being in the elements, but absent an electrical renovation to that space, the squads would still have to run. And I think that was detailed in the documents for you all, the difference there. So are you going to segue?
And the unfortunate aspect is that exhaust within inside that building, when you've got all kinds of cars like that, we don't have it built in that fashion. There were exhaust abilities, but for only a few trucks, not for a fleet of cars. And also, there is an option for that to add electrical so that, if you will, kind of like plugging in a block. But if the cars were plugged in, not for the car's engine, but for all of the electrical items that are within the cars, Dave has that comment in under City Hall Police Department, then there is a solution. The cars would not have to run, which would help the life of the cars. Right now, the cars just run idle all of the time. And also, there's some benefits there to get the cars inside the garage.
Are you going to talk money?
We can.
Unless there's questions on the actual conditions of the building. I mean, we've presented the facility plan to you all before, so none of that should be overly surprising. It's just, we tried to move forward with some assumptions on the renovations to spaces.
when I looked at the packet over the weekend, I realized that a couple of the pages were so
Blurry.
blurry, you couldn't read them. So pages 43 and 44, those two charts are what I've just passed out so that you can actually read what the numbers are on there. So I'll use this representative of all of the models that Baird has produced for us so that you understand how all of these numbers work together. This, looking at this, which is again, pages 43 and 44, this represents just the City Hall modifications. So if we were to look at page 43, it has a budget total of about $13.6 million. Again, we've got to remind ourselves, all of these are 2025 assumptions that were created in the end of 2024. So as time goes on, these numbers will obviously change, but got to use something. So using the $13.6 million, page 43, Baird just split the two years. There's nothing fancy about why 7.4 versus 6.2. It was just splitting the amount of money into two halves, assuming that the City Hall project would take about 3 years to accomplish if we followed the suggested phase 1, 2, and 3 that FEH laid out for us. If we were to do this, then if you're looking on what I've just handed out to you on page 9, the overall tax impact on the right side, combined debt service, if you see that column there, what this indicates is that each year for a number of years until 2034, there would be an add to the debt load of the city of $334,000. Okay. All of our debt is incorporating some assumptions, and I've listed those, so that we're assuming $4.5 million, approximately 4.5 is borrowed on an annual basis for other capital needs. This is in addition to that. We've incorporated into the numbers, a 2% growth on an equalized valuation on an annual basis, but as well added in Rock River Ridge as a development that is happening and all. And so using that schedule of what they've got for their builds, housing starts and the like, those are incorporated in here. There are no other assumptions for development that's taking place any other place in the city. I just felt like Rock River was a definitive moving forward. Anything else may or may not be happening. So in other words, a conservative approach that we're using what we know is definitely happening, but not necessarily anything else. So with that, so you understand, the colors just represent changes in approximately the same amount of money. So you've got about 9-10 years worth on the schedule where every year there's going to be an increase of 334,000, and then it maxes at 2034. And the models are all about the same. Every model maxes at that 2034 year at in this case, $3.09 per 1,000 for the debt load. And then you can see it stays about the same for another year and then starts going down for the next 5 years, then down again for the next 4 years, and so on. So the assumptions incorporate $4.5 million of borrowing on an annual basis throughout time. So that's already included with all of these numbers that are crunched. In addition to how much does it cost the taxpayer, which is definitely important, we do have to keep an eye on Moody's and this long-term liabilities ratio that is new. This wasn't something that we had about a year ago. Moody's started keeping track of these sorts of things. As long as we stay under a 300%, there's no issues whatsoever. And the hardship is hitting over 500%. Well, we're not close to 300%. And the indication is if we stay and maintain under 300%, we could potentially even see the possibility of an increase in our Moody's rating and all. There's no guarantees on that, but we are a good customer as it relates to the debt management from an outsider perspective. So Baird adds that now to all of their modeling, but I'm not saying that there's any surprise there. There's not an issue. We're not even close to being there 500%. And again, anything under 300% is very good for that. So I'll stop there, see if there's any questions with how that's understood.
Ms. Davis?
Talk to me how this detailed analysis of the city hall borrowing layers with the fire station borrowing.
Good question. And obviously the fire station borrowing came up after these models, and I didn't go back to ask Brad to reconfigure any of those. But if you recall, one of the aspects in the borrowing for the fire truck that I asked for clarification and modification was to put that borrowing on the 28 schedule. And that was intentional on my part for a couple of different reasons, but one of those was definitely the timing of this. And if we look at the other models, the timing of even the other models that includes the other buildings. The year 2028 is a lower year on the scheduling of multiple projects. And so it seems like the fire truck fits best in that year that this capital project would not be as expensive.
So I guess my question is, I'm looking at the detailed analysis of the fire station of the 14 million
The
or so.
station, not the
station-
ladder.
The station itself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the station itself, if we were to look at the year 34? When I look at that, it's about $2.08. On this detailed analysis for the city hall in that year, it'd be $3.09. So is it $3.09 plus $2.08?
No.
No,
So it's $3.09.
Yeah.
total,
So it's an additional dollar or so.
yes.
So the impact, I think the safest way to think about it in your mind is the fire station's already in here. Like those
Okay.
numbers are baked in all the borrowing that was well accounted for. What Mark was touching on is that what wasn't was
The fire truck.
Yeah.
the ladder truck, but
Ladder truck.
it works out nicely because there's a natural decline in that year where we would
Yeah.
bring on the
Yeah, I'm
ladder
sorry.
truck.
That's
It's okay.
I heard truck.
It was still relevant.
Yes.
Your info, so that's why I just let it go. I could see Ms. Davis slipping her hand up a couple times, like, I'm talking about the fire station, but I'm like, this is still good.
Yeah, the fire station is already incorporated into all of these. I didn't provide to you the prior page, but you know, that schedule is all inclusive in this combined debt service.
So for that $3.09 year, that would be about $309 for a $100,000 home. Am I doing my math right? And so almost $1,000 for a $300,000 home in a year. That's not nothing. That's something.
I thought
Did I do that math right?
$1,000, Mark?
It's one decimal point less than that.
Yeah, it's $100.
So 100,000 divided, it's not 100,000 divided by 1,000 to
Right,
get 100.
100,000 divided by 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Times what is 0.0309.
Okay, there's the math.
No, I
Okay,
wouldn't
thank
have,
you.
I wouldn't have gone like this for $1,000 or $1,000 more. It's $100.
Yes.
Or
Okay.
for like a $250,000 home, it's $250
Okay.
Yes.
It's
in the
decimal
worst
point.
year, in the
Okay.
worst year. The other years are much more similar to what we've grown more accustomed to. That $2-ish, somewhere in that $2 range.
Mhm.
I was like, wait a second. I would not have been that flippant about
No.
$1,000 more. No. And I'm not saying $250 isn't nothing either. I
understand.
think the question though is, I mean, it's only going to get more expensive you know, at what point do we make the investment in some of these spaces? And we're not asking you all for a decision tonight. We
Okay.
wanted to lay the groundwork. You all are the finance committee. You know, Mr. Moldenhauer and Ms. Davis are both running unopposed. Mr. Bartz isn't up for election. I don't know what the next mayor will do, but we at least wanted the opportunity to give you all the paperwork in the plan. So whether you're on this committee in the future or you're a member of the, you know, the Public Works Committee or council, you have a good basis of understanding of what the original strategy was for facility improvement assessment, which then fed into financing plan, how those things dovetail together with other large projects that will come before you all. Right, Mark? We're not. Yeah, we just did review and discuss, so.
Yep.
Yes, Mr. Bartz.
Another question. So you've kind of baked into this our normal planned
Yep.
spending every year, as well as the fire station. Did you say the fire truck was included potentially?
It
in
was
this?
not
It was not
included.
included?
Yeah, page 50, I would say is kind of the best summary
That's what-
of,
The one Mark handed out, just flip your page over. That gives a good summary of
Yeah.
the assumptions
Yep.
that were made.
yeah, and or page 50 also has
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yep.
But
easier to read.
well, my question is, so we've taken into consideration borrowing that we know that we already have planned. I guess my biggest concern would have been for the borrowing that we don't know about, right? Other things that might come up.
Yep.
So if the long-term liabilities ratio, you said if we stay under 300%, so in year 28, we're going to 240%. I'm just questioning what kind of room does that allow for other borrowing without getting into a position of being a bigger risk for the city?
Yeah, I would have to do some work to figure out what the maximum borrowing is, you know, to be able to indicate, here's where our level is and here's what we could borrow
Way.
and all, but it's a substantial,
way. We,
over double.
Oh.
I mean, an easy answer, we could double what we're borrowing.
Okay. That's a good answer. Thank you.
and that is in the audit, so you guys will get that number soon. There's that debt ratio and we're like.
Yeah.
Way under. So there's one other version of this plan and
Like
I want to,
30%, 33%, something like that.
I want to just be mindful of time. So the next layer of this is the other buildings. And Mark has a similar financing plan. I'll ask him to step through that, but the take home message on why we're even presenting both financing plans to you all, which would be to accommodate the wash bay and park rec and forestry. And the reason we're discussing that is the difference was not overly substantial.
Right.
I'll lead with the end. So do you want to fill in the detail?
Yep. So page 51 and 52 are effectively taking the combined total of all of the projects, which is on the top of page 50, 20,630. And trying to resolve the problems of the other departments that are all squished for space as well. The difference between scenario 1 and scenario 2 is the timing of the borrow versus trying to get the construction done. Scenario 1 is saying, let's borrow half and half in 2 years and get the work done in 3-year period of time. And scenario 2 is saying, let's take a little bit longer period of time to do this and borrow the money over 4 years and complete the work ending in 2030 and also over a 5-year period of time. If you look at page 52, then this talks to the fire truck. And you can see that in 28, the amount drops down to a 2.8 versus the other ones are 7 and 6 and 4. And also it seems to fit timing wise that we would be borrowing for that, which is also a sizable amount of money at one time or the other. Comparing these two together, looking at page 51 and 53, again, the schedule would be an increase of about 412,000 on the Schedule 1. Scenario 2, it's about 395,000. Both years end in the 2034 at the high end, once again, at 334 or 329. And you can see the Moody's ratio all have the same period of time, well, 2027 or 2029 in the 240, 255, 249 range. Again, nothing greater than that, so not close to the 300% mark for that. In looking at the two, there's very little difference between those. But I would say that admittedly, just the amount of work and effort that would go into construction projects of this nature is probably going to prompt us to want to do it over time, more so than all at one point in time. We have to understand at this juncture of time, we've been able to do a fire station, but we don't have a facilities manager. Somewhere along the line here, if we're going to invest into this amount of plant, part of it probably is to be smart with either contracting an outside source to do it and or hiring somebody internally and have for the first time ever a facilities manager for the city, which would be a great idea for that person then to take the lead and work with contractors to get these buildings built and the like. And all. There's a lot of work and effort when you're phasing this kind of work that is more than finance director can do on the side.
Hey now,
Sorry.
I only passed you this while we were constructing a station. I did all the other stuff. I do want to make mention of, so Mark provides to you all as well, these two hypothetical combined mill rate charts. And why I want to mention them is Mark is going to be able to provide you all by your next budgeting cycle, a 5-year forecast. We've been working on it, and that 5-year forecast combined with, by that time, you'll also have the pay study put before you all. That'll happen, but honestly, that'll happen on April 7th, most likely. But the pay study, you'll have a 5-year forecast, and you'll have this. You'll have this big plan, like more data than, I mean, Miss Davis, you've got to be just jumping from the rooftops. I know I would be. I remember when I sat over there, we didn't even have a 5-year capital plan. So like to have these components and very intelligent members of your internal team to guide you in these choices. So again, we're not looking for you all to make decisions today, but we want to set the table that, like if you look at this peak, that peak is intentionally timed well beyond the time where you're going to implement a new pay plan, as an example. So the sequencing really makes a lot of difference. And hopefully what Mark will be able to give you on that 5-year forecast is decision points on expenditure restraint and the years where it makes sense to hop in and out, if ever. I mean, just a lot more forecasting to make these important choices. Yes, ma'am.
I think I realized the error of my ways. I don't think my math was wrong. My understanding was wrong. This is $3.09, the total debt assessed or total, and I was seeing it as an increase.
Yeah,
So
it's the total.
Mill
I think my
rate.
math was right. My understanding was wrong, and I've corrected my understanding now.
Is there anything else? So I asked our team to be here. So Carol's on remote, or someone from health is, I just saw it said Department of Public Health. Obviously Stacy's hanging out because their buildings are all buildings that would be considered. And, Andrew and Christine, I've got on the text machine if we need her. Are there any questions you have for them? Otherwise, I'd like to be able to let them leave.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
All right, you all can hit the road. Are there any other topics, Mark, you wanted to touch on with this? Let me see who else is remote here. So whoever, Pete and Carol or Abby, whoever's joining from health, you guys are good to go. Obviously, you're welcome to stay, but Mark, is there anything else you wanted to be able to hit on? Any questions you guys have?
I just wanted to say that when I was reading through this on my own, kind of like the true confession here, like from Alderman Davis, but I didn't see this being feasible to do anything than maybe the city hall, but after going through this with you, I think I have a better understanding, and it looks like, especially if we do this phased over 5 years, that this is totally feasible, so.
I think it's something that once a new council is seated and Mark's had a chance to go over it with the new mayor, it's probably a good committee of the whole topic. We've presented it in various ways, but good to, come back and really explain.
Yeah.
What else is gonna layer in is what Public Works is gonna hear tomorrow night, which is the Rock River District Plan. So, I mean, it's just I know it seems like a lot, but it is just such a wonderful opportunity to make decisions from a point of knowledge. And that's really what we're looking to provide you all with here. And this, Mark, correct me, but these are just what Brad and Mark, and in a loose way, I think is a good approach. This could be nipped and tucked and redesigned several times. Brad does an
All of the
excellent job.
numbers on the architect side as well.
Yeah,
These are just, the level of detail is what you see. That's it. There are no
yeah,
walls.
this is the design for the health department.
Yeah.
It's these squares.
I wasn't
So-
wowed by their pictures here.
No.
But I understand. That does bring up a question. As you sat down with this team and you talked through needs, were they given any kind of budget constraints? Or were they just saying, if you were going to use this, what's the best use of space? Go for it.
There were no limits on that. They understand and they work with municipalities all of the time. And also they understand that their money is not limitless for that and all. But, we've got to remind ourselves, for instance, on our capital improvements list currently is almost a $300,000 boiler replacement for this building.
Mhm.
So there's all kinds of things that we could do nothing and we're still going to have to spend money. Part of what they were attempting to do is really look at, are there ways and means to move other departments into this building? Could we save some by, mothballing a different facility? And the answer was no, that it really didn't fit. Parks would be one that could potentially, but yet the same issue that they have now in being in two different locations doesn't get solved by just moving them down the street to here and all. Everyone needs storage. That's the toughie. This building was
Accessory
last
land uses.
created 20 years ago.
Okay.
Last modified 20 years ago. I'll look at it and say, okay, this would be then the new modification that what we need for the next 20 to 30 years.
And I'll add to that, we didn't have budget numbers to play with, but there was different versions presented that
Yeah,
were,
there were 5 iterations.
so we went with the version that would condense as much as we could, like where people were and the use of spaces.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like, an open-ended, what would you love to have type exercise.
And that's what I tried to give you on page 38, some of the goals that were
Yeah.
created on this list for it and all. It's an interesting, from the project that I came from at Rock County to here, one of the huge improvements that we made for Rock was safety and security of our employees. We don't have that here at all.
Mm-mm.
There is no safety or security. We have an open building that anybody can kind of run through freely. And I think of it every time I schedule the front doors. Anytime that front door is open, people have free reign to the entire building. There is no safety within the halls of this building that is satisfied in a new plan. And it's like, at what cost is the life of one of our employees that right now is open wide and all. So some of it is it's behind the scenes that would solve numbers of issues.
And I think a decision point at some point in the near future is needed because there's been things we've chosen not to do. Like key fobs comes up every single year I've been here. And every year we're like, let's not, because you're putting electrical into door frames. And so, I mean, we've conscientiously not invested in items that we otherwise will need to. Mark hit on the big one, obviously, which is the boiler. But even when you look at, like, we were considering a planning commission, some of the Katy Street buildings we own, I mean, there's 6 figures of money just to put into those buildings. So it's just a decision point on where the money goes. And I think that's what made the fire station a little bit more consumable. It's not, do we need it? It's which path do we take? Do we take a path where we have to renovate the existing station and build a satellite station? Do we take the path of building a new station? So it's kind of a similar thought here. Do we renovate? Do we do small things? Do we do a bigger picture that can be balanced? So those are future choices, but yes, sir.
On vacation of the upper second level over the fire station, has anybody got any ideas what we're gonna do with that? It's gonna be vacated, right?
The second story of the fire station?
The upper level.
Yeah, that would get, Mark, that gets repurposed with the plan that's in this packet.
Yes.
Yep.
That would be, the police would not be using that?
In this version of the plan, we move the police all to the first floor. So right now we have cops on the second floor and the first floor.
But that would be, they'd be going to the first floor, and then
Yeah.
what would be going in the second floor?
Page 40. Page 40 in the packet.
Okay, page 40.
Yep, kind of lays it out. Again, this is a concept, but that would indicate where the use would potentially be available.
Okay, anything else for now? You guys are good? Okay, great job, Mark. You've done an excellent job at this. All right, our next item is item J, and item J has several subs under it. This was an offer to purchase and sell some parcel numbers listed here. The Planning Commission denied both of those, therefore there is no negotiating strategy that you all need to make. So we have no action on item J, and then with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that,
Oh,
can I just ask, format wise, okay, this is something different that Stephen is suggesting on J, because it's all related together. Recall the last
Yes.
agenda was 2 pages long and we got down to the ZZs, you know, so these are all related and it's all issue J
Yes.
with subparts 1 through 5. Are you okay with that change in layout?
I like it.
the only thing that confused me a bit at Planning Commission was J and 1 are the same. So I just need to, whoever does it would just need to get used to reading and however you minute it, right?
Sure.
Like I'm calling J and then I'm like, wait, J1 is really, well, they're the same.
The same
but-
as the J, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right, could I please have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Mr. Bartz, second by Mr. Moldenhauer. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:50.